Hey folks, my name's Tristan. I'm just going to walk through the basics of building a song from scratch using Ableton Live and Push 2. Obviously there are a ton of different ways you can do this. This is one way I prefer to do it. I like to do all my recording and primarily writing in session view. I know some people like to record into arrange view. I think of arrange view more like if you're in a traditional band recording context. If you had a band come in that knew all the songs, how they were going to go from start to finish, then yeah, arrange view would make more sense in that context. If you're just beginning, just writing a song, I think session view makes a lot more sense. It's a lot less restrictive, gives you all these options and freedom to explore different ideas, different arrangements, experiment, all that good stuff. All right, so I'm going to begin with a drum track. I've got two blank MIDI tracks here. I'm just going to click the first MIDI track, select Add Device, choose Drums, and find a suitable drum kit. That one sounds pretty good. Let's hit load. Okay, so now Live creates what they call a drum rack, which is down here. We can see this grid of 4x4 squares. Each square is loaded with a different drum sound. There are more available squares to use, but we've only used 16 of them. That's enough for most mere mortals writing a song. And we can see that reflected in Push 2. So Push 2 sees we have a drum track loaded, and it's illuminated at the bottom 16 drum pads. So we can quickly play back the sounds. But of course we've got 64 pads in Push, so it has some clever ways of putting them to use in other ways. So for example, this mode is called Loop Selector. In this case, it breaks Push down into 3 different groups. The bottom left is the 16 drum sounds. The bottom right is where we create patterns and change the length of patterns. And the top 32 pads here, this top half, is how we program the patterns. Let me show you how that works. It's going to make a new clip by clicking this pad here. Now we can see this light following through the top 2 rows of pads. These 2 rows represent 1 bar, so that's 1 bar of 16 steps. And we have to choose where each drum sound occurs on the 16 steps. So I'm going to start with the kick drum. And let's put a kick on number 1. Not too original, but it works. Let's turn the metronome and slow it down a little bit. All right, that's a kick done. Let's move over to snare. Let's put snare on these 2 hits. That's a pretty good start, I think. That's the start of our drum part. Let's move to a second pattern. I'm just going to click on Duplicate. And it's going to make a duplicate clip in the next available slot. So this next drum pattern is going to be a variation of the first. I want it to be twice as long though, so I'm going to click on Double Loop. And it tells me the new loop length is 2 bars. So this new loop is 2 bars, whereas the first was 1 bar. So when I click play, you can see the light going through all 32 pads to show this is a 2-bar loop. And now I'm going to add in a hi-hat part, which I'm going to play by hand. So I'm just going to hit record and go for it. Wasn't too bad. I'm going to hit quantize to fix up any little errors I might have made. Now I intentionally left the last part blank because I want to use the note repeat function here. With note repeat enabled, if I hold down a pad, it's going to keep on triggering that note at whatever subdivision we specify using these buttons here. So for example, if I choose 16th, it gives me continuous 16th notes or 32nd notes. And you can change this on the fly. It's really cool. Cool, so I'm just going to quickly lay down some 16th and 32nd notes. All right, not bad. So that's the beginning of a drum part. We've got 2 different patterns there. I'm not really thrilled with the way these drums sound though, so I'm just going to change the kick and the snare for something a bit more appropriate. Maybe a bit more 80s sounding. Let's click on the snare, the drum kit here. That'll open it up so we can see all the individual components. We can see the kick drum, rim click, the snare, etc. Let's click on kick and then click on browse. This is where we can browse for different samples to replace the kick drum with. Let's dig into user files. This is my own personal stash. One shots, kick drum. I know there's some good 80s kick sounds here. They're both pretty good. Let's go with that one. Click load. Now we've replaced that old kick with our new one, which is actually an old kick. That's a good start. Let's change the snare as well. Go back to the drum kit, click on snare this time. Now click on browse, back to my own stash, use a library, snare. All right, there's a ton of snares here. Let's find one with a nice gated 80s reverb on it. There's heaps. There's one. Cool. Let's load that in. All right, now our drum pattern sounds like this. Much better. Now we're seeing some bass. Let's move to the second track. We've got a blank MIDI track here. Now I'm going to click Add Device. This time go to Sounds and choose the bass category. I found a cool 80s bass here before, which I probably should have put in a more convenient location. That's the one, cool. Let's click Load. Here's our bass part. All right, so Push has recognized that we have a melodic instrument here, not a drum rack. So it's laid the pads out more like a keyboard. Currently it's restricted us to play notes in C major, which I appreciate the gesture, but let's go to A minor for this one, because I'm in a dark, brooding mood. Great. Now to record the bass part, I'm going to use that note repeat function like we did for the hi-hat. In this case, it'll work more like an arpeggiator. So if I click 16th notes, I get a 16th note arpeggiator. It's cool as the pads on Push are also pressure sensitive. So I can press into the pad while I'm playing it and it'll alter things like filter cutoff. All right, let's do a recording pass, lay down some bass. Cool, that was one pass. Let's do a second part, which is a slight variation on the first one. All right, I think that's pretty good. There's our two bass parts and our two drum parts. A little bit boring though. Let's add an effect to the bass part to spice things up a little bit. Let's select the bass part. And again, hit Add Device, but this time I'm going to scroll to Audio Effects. I'm going to choose a gate. Maybe an unusual choice. A gate is usually used as a utility to get rid of like noise on guitar parts, things like that. In this case, I am going to use it as an effect in a creative manner. So here's our gate plugin here. If I click this arrow, it opens it up. I can see some hidden features, like a sidechain. When I turn on the sidechain and choose the drum kit as the source, it's going to listen to the drum part and only let the bass part play while the drums are playing, which is strange. This is how it sounds. It's kind of cool, I guess. Not really what I want though. So I'm going to click on Flip. Flip tells the gate to do the inverse. Now it's only going to let the bass part play while the drums aren't playing. Yeah, got a bit more groove to it. It's going to tweak some parameters. Cool, that's pretty good, I think. Yeah, it's got a bit more life. All right, there's two parts down. Let's add a synth keys part. I've run out of MIDI tracks here, so I'm going to click Add Track. Let's go MIDI track. And this time I'm going to scroll to synth keys. Let's find another suitably retro key set. That's pretty good. Let's roll with this one. Click Load. And once again, Push sees it's a melodic instrument, so we've got a keyboard layout. All right, I'm just going to quickly lay down some chords and see how it goes. was okay. I'm comfortable with that. Again, it's a bit boring, so I'm going to use a noise gate again to get a similar effect to last time, but with some slightly different parameters. So let's click on our synth, click Add Device, scroll down to Audio Effects, choose Gate, throw that in there. Now again, I'm going to turn on the sidechain, but I'm going to tell it to listen to the bass part this time. And I'm not going to flip the operation. So now the keys are only going to play when the bass part is playing, and the bass part's only playing when the drums aren't playing. So it's a very meta, confusing debacle I've got myself in here. But let's see how it goes. A bit of tweaking. Oh, it's a start. I need to spend a bit more time on that, but you get the idea. All right, so now we've got the basics of the song down here. We've got some drum parts, some bass parts, some keys parts. Now we need to move these recordings over into Arrange View so we can get a fixed linear arrangement that we can export as a WAV file. So we can play it back without having to trigger all the clips all the time. So if I move to Arrange View, once I click on this record button here, it's going to record all the activity we're doing in Session View, all the clip launching, all the volume changing, effect tweaking, everything. So I'm just going to hit record and bring in some bass, bring up the volume of the drums, and just see what happens. So wish me luck. This is live, remember? Alrighty, that's it. That's our song done. Once I've finished successfully bouncing into Arrange View, I just use these handles here to select the part of the song we want to export. Then click on File, Export. Choose what format we want it in, WAV file, option for MP3. Hit export and we're done. All right, that's been a quick look at songwriting using Ableton Live and Push 2. Thanks for watching.